And today's topic is from head to heart. And this is a shift of paradigm that we're all being called toward is honoring the intelligence of the heart and the wisdom of the heart rather than the what we consider rational dominance of the mind. So this will be fun. But before we get started, let's just take a minute or two to settle in and get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and imagine sparkling, clean, crisp oxygen just flowing into your lungs and flooding your bloodstream and nourishing your cells and your organs and enlivening and invigorating you. And then exhale any tension, any stress. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose. Hold it, and this time imagine brilliant, bright light lighting up all the molecules and electrons of your body and your being and connecting you with the universe beyond. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension. And let's just gently press our palms together. Softly, softly, softly rub your fingers against your palms. Feel the tingling and the tickling and that delicious sensation, and allow yourself to just presence yourself to your body and your physicalness and become present right here, right now. Welcome, welcome. It's a Monday again. It keeps on happening. I guess we can count on that, right? Um, that's a wonderful thing. The simple things that we can count on. I mean, pretty much we can count on the sun coming up, right? And the sun going down and weeks turning into months and years, and it just keeps turning, right? So we might as well learn to ride that wave. Good morning, Catherine. Great to have you here, and wonderful to have all of you here who are joining me or rewatching this. Let's talk about from head to heart. The inspiration for this conversation is a group that I met with over the weekend on Zoom, and it was sort of it's a group coaching circle, and each person gets to present a case or a situation, and then through these certain techniques, presencing techniques, we all connect and support this person. So one of the person who was giving the case was a man who has been I guess a project manager of sorts and something of an inventor, and considers himself to be very rational. And it's interesting because the context of this coaching circle is very much connecting with the heart, because the heart has the ability to sense into the emerging future. This is from the course that I've mentioned a number of times, called Leading from the Emerging Future. And so this fellow was talking about how he was feeling challenged in collaboration with the team that he had assembled to develop a new product, and having some anxiety around that and wanting to figure it all out. And uh, the coaching that we provided for him really highlighted the importance and the value of connecting to his heart and the wisdom of his inner knowing. And I think that this is worthy of conversation because it is a massive shift in paradigm that is starting to become mainstreamed, which is really exciting, or at least conversation about it is starting to become mainstreamed, because certainly, well, culturally, we're conditioned to rely on our minds, to rely on our power of rational thought. And traditionally, uh, the gender stereotypes have, and this was something that he reiterated, or that, that he spoke, which was really interesting. Gender stereotypes say men are rational and women are emotional, and the understatement to that is, and rational, it makes sense, and emotions are frivolous, right? So we're just talking stereotypes here. So when there is the encouragement to move from quote unquote rational thought to the guidance provided by the heart, then that becomes a big dilemma for a lot of people, particularly men who have been deeply enculturated into this notion of rationality, being rational, that prevails overall. That's the most valued standard for decision making, and for creating business, or for general interactions, is be rational. And the thing is, and this is something that I've discovered over and over with coaching clients, is that our rational minds are often very disconnected from a bigger picture. Uh, on one hand, and on the other hand, our rational minds also can be playing both sides of the field at the same time, and kind of draw us into tremendous turmoil and upset. And so this notion of sinking into the heart and quieting yourself to be able to connect with that inner voice, for many of us, takes practice, because we have been so conditioned to ignore it and to deny it and to silence it. And so it is a practice. I mean, I may be preaching to the choir here, because so many of you are heart-centered people. I'm not talking about being carried away with emotion when I'm talking about connecting with the heart. There may be emotion there, but what I'm talking about is connecting to that deep inner voice, that inner sense that is bred from a broader awareness of the field, and a broader connection to the field beyond the rational knowing. Because our minds, as much as we like to think that we're expansive and generating new ideas and open-minded, literally we're not. What's happening is our brain is acting as a funneling system, or a sorting system, to eliminate lots of information and lots of input so that we can function. If we had access to all the input all the time, we probably would not even be able to eat, or do any of the things that our lives depend on, because we would be so inundated with information. Hello, Danette. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here. We're talking about the movement from head to heart, or from rational thought to the wisdom of our inner voice. And I think it's very easy to get ourselves in a roil over the way that we put thoughts together, or we synthesize things, because we also do learn to become habituated to patterned thought. We do learn certain modes of thought, and we then repeat those patterns over and over and over again, and delude ourselves by imagining that we're generating something new in so many cases, because we're caught in this disconnected loop of our ideas around action and consequence. Hello, Christina. Welcome. So glad to have you here. So, how do we do this motion from head to heart? Well, even before talking about how we do it, I want to acknowledge that for many people, it's terrifying because it feels like giving up control. And we think that by going through our intellectual machinations that we are exercising some sense of sanity in trying to figure things out. You know, we're thinking things through, but our intuition, what we call intuition, is actually incorporating greater senses around what is happening in the field in which we're operating. So by moving out of the head and moving into this heart space, this space of presence, what happens is we're able to tap into what we typically call intuition, or maybe even the field. We're able to tap into this broader field of information that then provides information that seems counterintuitive, or that isn't necessarily rational, but that makes more sense, or that is a more creative solution, or more generative. We are able to access something greater beyond the pattern thinking that we have convinced ourselves is rational. So I'm wondering if you guys have experienced the difference between moving from the head and moving from the heart. I can give an example that's just present for me right now. I know that a number of you are navigating difficult situations in life, and we all do. And I have, and I'm gonna keep this generic as to the best of my ability. So I have had an encounter with someone in my life who is aging and with whom I've had a fraught relationship on and off. And I was concerned about this person's health because they gave me some indicators that perhaps there was something more acute going on than had been recently. And so I inquired about their health and followed up later in the day to see how they were doing, thinking, well, I wanted to check in and see if you're feeling any better or if you're feeling any different. And the person just sort of lost it on me and hollered at me for disrupting them and disturbing them, and always asking how they were, et cetera, et cetera. And so after this conversation, I was taken aback. I was just like, wow, I was really just calling to find out how you were doing, and if you were feeling any better, and if there was anything I could do for you. And I felt attacked initially. In fact, I was attacked. Um, but I, in my head wanted to, hello, Liliane, welcome, welcome. I'm talking about a situation that might be familiar to you, Liliane, based on what you've been speaking of lately. So, and a situation where a person was unkind, was angry and um, just mean, just plain mean. That was my initial experience of this interaction, and then in my head, I could go in and just validate that this person was just being mean and this was sort of a history, and on and on. I could have done that. And what I chose to do was to, like you, Liliane, move into the heart. And from a place of putting myself in this person's shoes, I got to recognize things that my head wouldn't have otherwise allowed. And what I got to recognize is the fear that this person was experiencing. Hello, Hope. Welcome and good afternoon. So Liliane says, yes, I got it. Just had to go on and out to get you to see my comments. Okay, cool. So what I noticed when I allowed myself to sink into my heart, like the presence part of my heart, rather than the part that was taking everything personally. And we've spoken about this before. Um, what I recognized is that this person was fearful, and this person was struggling and um, having a really hard time, and the calls for concern were adding to her fear, and to her frustration. And so um, I was able to gain a deeper view and a deeper compassion for the experience that this person was having, and can allow that to guide my behavior going forward and my choice. So we last week we talked about abuse, and how a number of us were saying abuse is never okay, and it's a matter of how we perceive things, right? So Liliane says, yes, that's what I've experienced too. Yeah, I had a feeling that you had experienced something similar. So when someone is outright just plain mean, we might consider that that's abuse, and we might decide that that is unacceptable. And from this place of compassion and recognition of what's going on for this other person, we have the opportunity to to contextualize their behavior without taking it personally. And if we don't take it personally, then it doesn't register as abuse. And so this is where we get to determine our experience. You know, we get to determine from our reference point what our experience is. And if indeed this behavior of the other is actually abusive. So interesting twist there, right? Christina says, oh my gosh, I had the opposite happen very recently. I'm feeling just a little under the weather with a mild cold. No worries. I'm glad. Thank you for saying no worries. But was met with anger when I made the decision to do some self-care, then ignored and even lied to. It truly is a matter of perception, isn't it? Yes, yes. So interesting that someone would be angry at you for doing self-care, right? Maybe somehow they felt it was a threat to them, that you were taking attention away from them and putting it on yourself, heaven forbid, right? Someone to think worst of others. As long as our heart is in the right place, we can't take it personally. Right. I think that that's really key, is not taking things personally, you know. When it's really interesting. I remember my dad used to get so angry when the weather wasn't nice, and he took it personally. He took the weather personally. And if you think about it, there's something kind of crazy about that, right? Like, as a personal affront, the weather being bad. It was just really interesting how we can create our situation and our experience and consequently our circumstances based on how we interpret the events in our lives. And Lillian says, actually, just before I got on here, I experienced this because I needed this day for my self-care. More and more and more of us, I think, need more time for self-care. Lillian says, but actually I take too little time to care for myself. Well, it's important to care for ourselves, obviously. And sometimes that means saying no to people that are used to us saying yes all the time, right? Oh, well, the anger is theirs. And we get to decide whether to take the anger personally and let that throw us off base. But if we put ourselves in their shoes, so this person I was talking about got really angry at me, and I was completely floored. When we take the time to put ourselves in their shoes, we have a capacity for compassion and understanding that can shift our experience and our reaction and our response. And most of all, I see this kind of practice as a practice of self-care, because I want to be, my commitment for myself is to live as fully in alignment with my values as I can. And I value honor and respect for others. I value love and compassion and connection. And if I choose to honor myself and my values, then I get to embody those things as fully as I can. And in order to do that, it means being connected. It means moving from my heart rather than my head. It means finding balance, which is being not reactive, being at choice. Actually, the thing I value most is being at choice, being free, freedom. And so if moving into my heart and this space of presence provides me greater freedom and greater capacity to be at choice, then that's the obvious path for me. And so Catherine says, yes, yes, yes. And Lillian says, others see me as the strong one that's always there, but they not see me as I also just need some care. Yes, right, Lillian? When you're the strong one, people can expect you always to be in that role rather than see you as someone that needs something too. So uh, in terms of self-care, so in a way it really is threatening to them when you say, listen, I really need to take some time out. It's threatening to them because it's threatening their vision of who you are potentially and the strength that you are. Like if you're always the rock and you're having a tough time, well, what does that mean for them? Right? It's possible because they're taking it personally. And Christina says, oh, well, LOL. But really, I am trying to put myself in their shoes. It does help, and I'm glad I have developed my own self-respect not to take it too personally. Well, that's really an important thing is to have enough self-respect, to value your own well-being enough to not take it personally, because people act how they act. They're acting out of their experience, they're acting out of their interpretations, they're acting out of their history and their perspective and their awareness or lack of it, right? So it's not personal. It's actually not personal. We sort of act as foils or triggers for each other, but we're all kind of living in our very own little worlds. And moving into the heart allows us to expand the boundaries of that world to include more information and more capacity. Lillian says, but I'm working on taking more self-care without feeling bad for doing that. It's what we learned to do since I was a child, take care of others. Yeah, so we all know the story about the airplane. It's like if the oxygen masks drop, put on your own mask first. Why? Because if you don't put on your mask and if you can't breathe, then you're not there to help others either. So I think so many healer folks have a deep sense of guilt around self-care, around making sure that our own needs are met. And the thing is that that is deeply misplaced. And when we feel guilty about self-care, we might assert our need and desire for self-care in a way that leaves room for people to be angry at us because they're sensing the guilt and the reticence, our reluctance that we have to take care of ourselves, so maybe we feel guilty taking that time out for ourselves and prioritizing our own well-being. And when we communicate it, it comes across as something we're trying to push through. And as we push it, people feel pushed and respond to that. That can happen too. So it is an important and skill to cultivate, to really know that you deserve that care, that not only do you deserve it, but it's essential. It's essential, just like the oxygen mask, just like breathing, it's essential. And Lillian says, yes, that's right, Mira. We all act like what we experienced and learned to do. So I understand others, even if it sometimes feels hard to hear. I here, I don't care if I take some self time. So yeah, so understanding others, even if it sometimes feels hard to hear that I don't take enough self time. I think that's what you're saying, Lillian. Um, and good for you to be learning to take self care. So here's the thing, especially now with trying to navigate the craziness that that we're faced with daily in the world. There's so much going on in the field. There's so many emotions flying. There's so many situations. There's so many contrasts. There's so much upheaval that as sensitives, we need to take the time to take care of ourselves, to recharge ourselves, to be able to come back into the place of presence and service and just navigating our lives. Catherine says, I always have put others first. Pandemic, me knowing I need to care for me. Yes, staying home, just being, husband and family are not happy. I am being. Well, yes, because you're always being there for them, Catherine. So good for you to be realizing that if you don't take care of you, there's no way you would be there to be able to be there for them, right? And maybe there's a way to help them recognize that too, to just say, hey, you know what? I do all this stuff for you guys. I don't have anything left. I need to recharge. And yeah, maybe they can help support you, creating a new dynamic. I think that that's one thing that has been a profound gift of this pandemic is that we have had to, of necessity, adjust a number of our patterns, and we're also experiencing things more deeply, I think, as a whole. And new behaviors are generating out of that. Lillian says, I needed to be here today and hear this. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that it makes a difference, Lillian, because really you and me, all of us, everybody needs to be taking care of ourselves. We all need to take care of ourselves. And then we have more resources to be able to share with others. The thing about putting everybody else first is that it breeds resentment, and it also breeds a sense of violation at some point, which is associated with the resentment, because you give and give and give, and you think that your giving is going to be graciously received with appreciation and acknowledgement. And so often that's not the case, right? And so if you stop giving, all of a sudden, then you get the blowback, because people have become habituated to your generosity, that they just took it for granted and didn't recognize it. And when you then just give as you feel inspired to give, it's a whole different dynamic, right? It's a whole different dynamic. And Catherine, I do hope for you that your family acclimates, because it's a new you that is recognizing that it's time for you to have the care that you absolutely deserve as well, right? And so Lillian says, yes, I feel this way exactly and what I needed today. I'm guided in the right place at the right time. And that's a wonderful thing to remember, Lillian. It's a great thing for all of us to be holding as a declaration. I'm always in the right place at the right time. And there's always an opportunity for me. And Lillian says, yes, they got addicted to my help. Well, that's what happens. So here's the thing, too. And this is sort of the ugly side of being a giver, right? Is to when you're the ugly side of being a giver is that sometimes we give and give to in order for people to become addicted to our help, in order for people to need us, right? Because then it makes us feel needed. And so that's a danger, is making people dependent upon us because it validates us, it strengthens us in feeling that we're important for someone. And then what happens is they are become addicted to it. They are not appreciative of it because that's the baseline. And then we become resentful, right? We forget that we cultivated that because we had a need to be needed in many cases. So, I'm not saying that this necessarily applies to you, but it's an opportunity to look and say, hey, is that the case? Do I put myself in a place to be needed by others? I certainly have seen that behavior in me in the past, is to be putting myself in a position where I was needed, and then ended up becoming resentful. So I I would like you to be able to spare yourself that. And it's not an easy path to rewrite the rules, right? So these people that have become addicted to your help, when you withdraw that help, that's their lifeline. That's become a really important thing, and they get pissed off. They get angry. So yeah, we get to look at the behaviors that we are eliciting in others and what our motivation is as well. And rather than thinking it through necessarily, because again, we can go around and round, and there's lots of self-blame that comes up with habitual thought. One of the things that we can do in this situation is sink down into that place of quiet presence in the heart and touch in and allow yourself to see without judgment what the motivations have been. Because if we've needed to be needed, then there's also most likely the part that's going to say, and look at how you did this and judge me for that and blame me for this and criticize me for that internally, like all that internal stuff going on. So we don't need to engage in that. What we want to do is just sink into the heart. And when we're sinking into the heart, we're quieting that noisy mind. We're allowing ourselves to feel into the situation without judgment. And what shows up is some recognition of the dynamic. Like I realized that my interaction with this person that got so upset with me about inquiring about their health was similar to a reaction I had had with them a long time ago when they were making the same inquiries around my health. And so what I was able to recognize was the projection of fear and concern that I was making toward this person was upsetting to them in the same way that their expression of that had been upsetting to me a long time ago. So I was able to understand really what it was like to be in that position and in those shoes. So this has been an awesome conversation. I'm so glad you guys show up and play with me here. really, really heartwarming and heart opening for me. And I'm so grateful to you. And so we get to move from this paradigm of logic and figuring things out from a dispassionate perspective. See, I think it's this dispassionate perspective that's enabled us uh, to perpetrate so many of the horrors that we have perpetrated on each other and on the planet, you know, is by being rational, like dispassionate and figuring things out rather than moving from a place of connectedness, right? So as we find ourselves trying to think our way through things, maybe we have the opportunity to presence ourselves instead to the wisdom of our hearts as a quiet space that's there without judgment, but that's there giving us access to a greater wisdom. So thank you all. And Dido, thank you. It has been really a privilege to be with you today. Thank you. And I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I'm here every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern. And we go live on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page. So please check out the Enlightened World Network community of light workers and healers and seekers and finders. So thank you so much, Lillian. Much love to all of you. And I hope I see you again here soon. Take care now.